Do you guys remember this scene from the Phantom Menace? Well, it turns out this Force ability is a pretty rare one, and a common question I see being asked is, why haven't we seen it again? Well, actually we have, but not in the exact same way. This Force ability was known as Force Dash, also called Force Speed or Force Sprint. It's appeared in several books, in Star Wars Rebels, in the Clone Wars, and Jedi Fallen Order, but it originates in the Phantom Menace, and the form it took in the film has never been seen again. The most common form of Force Dash we know is when a Force user is able to increase their speed for a brief amount of time. They perceive the world in slow motion, allowing them to dodge attacks and move swiftly with greater accuracy. While very powerful in short bursts, the reason we don't see Jedi use it very often is because overexertion leads to draining of their energy. And you know, there are many occasions across the saga it would have been very useful for Star Wars characters to use it, including later in the Phantom Menace itself. If Obi-Wan had been able to pass through the laser gates faster, he could have saved his master's life. Aside from in-universe reasons, the most likely explanation for why it's so rare is because it's a plot hindrance. Those who can't use it would never pose a single threat to the Jedi. Audiences don't watch Star Wars to see the heroes running away from conflict. They want exciting fight scenes. And in the case of the prequel trilogy, fans wanted to see the Jedi at their best. There has been some speculation the main reason Force Speed only appears in Episode 1 is because the droideka sequence was altered during editing, and therefore there was no usable footage of Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon escaping, but there was no solid evidence this was the case. With all of this being said though, my dear friends, in the 2022 canon novel Star Wars Brotherhood by Mike Chen, an in-universe reason for the rarity of Force Dash was finally provided. In a chase sequence from Chapter 30, Obi-Wan sees an opportunity to use Force Dash. However, he chooses not to, because, quote, a Force-assisted burst of speed would leave his body exhausted. Another reason is one George Lucas once alluded to. The Jedi during Episode 1 were in their prime. The Clone Wars hadn't yet begun. Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon spent nearly their entire lives training to be Jedi, and they had many resources at their disposal to learn about the Force. Jedi later in the timeline didn't. In the expanded universe, it was a bit different though. In the new Jedi Order, it was a common Force ability employed by Luke and Mara Jade. Some Jedi considered it dangerous, and occasionally it was employed by Dark Jedi and Sith. After his turn to the dark side, Jacen Solo was known to use it. And fun fact, Master Indara used it in The Acolyte, not to run fast, but to dodge maze attacks and perceive time in slow motion. I was honestly very surprised to see it in The Acolyte, and I guess the reason was we just saw Master Indara as Space Trinity, but I guess there is a canon way to explain many Force moves. Now, something very important to note about Force Dash. In order to use it, the Force user in question has to attune their entire body with their heightened reflexes. So while it is a Force ability most Force users can tap into, as we learn in the expanded universe, it's difficult to know just by instinct. It's easier if you're taught it, like the Jedi of the Republic. And if you read the novelization of Shadows of the Empire, then you know that Luke learnt it from Obi-Wan's Force Ghost. During Luke's confrontation at Prince Shizor's palace on Coruscant, he heard the voice of Obi-Wan. In that moment, Luke discovered Force Dash. He gave into the Force, he focused on his breathing, and found that time seemed to slow down. It's a rather unique Force ability, and while it's true, it rarely manifests as dramatically as in the Phantom Menace, it still presents, nonetheless, in other forms. It's not as rare as you think. But in the making of this video, I thought to myself, what are some other Force abilities we rarely see on screen? Some of the more known ones include Shatterpoint, a Force ability that allows the user to sense the weak points in an object or a person, enabling the Force user to easily identify and exploit that weakness. In the novel Shatterpoint, its most prominent user, Mace Windu, describes the power as follows: I sometimes can see the weak places in my opponent. Shatterpoints where the unbreakable can be broken. They can occur in individuals and in events. Another famous Force ability is Psychometry, most famously associated with Quinlan Vos. We've also seen this Force ability make a resurgence in the Jedi games. This ability allows the Force user to gain insight and information just by touching an object. The Force user can pick up impressions, memories, and even emotions from those who've picked up the object in the past, every being who came in contact with it. But how about some Force abilities you might not be as familiar with? For instance, Force Cloak. This has to be one of my favorites from Knights of the Old Republic 2. This Force ability was more of an illusion, able to manipulate the light and sound around a Force user. It rendered them invisible to those around them. Unlike the Jedi mind trick, which is different, it doesn't alter the mind of its targets, but rather the space around the user. Force Cloak is similar to Force Camouflage, but it is slightly different. And another common confusion is mixing up Force Cloak and Force Stealth. Force Cloak can make you invisible to the naked eye, whereas Force Stealth conceals your presence in the Force. But just like Force Dash, Force Cloak is taxing. And then, my dear friends, another obscure ability that was lost to time is called Wall of Light. This comes from the book Jedi vs. Sith, The Essential Guide to the Force. It was considered the most powerful offensive ability a Jedi could do. And if you were a Force user, you couldn't just do this on your own. It took several Jedi. The Wall of Light is exactly what you think it is. It was used as an imprisonment mechanism, trapping dark side users and severing their connection to the Force. In the amazing non-canon Tales of the Jedi Sith war comics, thousands of Jedi created a massive wall of light to defeat Exar Kun, a Dark Lord of the Sith. Our next rare Force ability is definitely one which is very uncommon these days, but it's one you might have heard of because of a power by a similar name that was spoken about quite a bit in the build-up to the Rise of Skywalker back in 2019. It wasn't used in the film, but given parallels to Palpatine's return in the expanded universe, the ability known as Dark Transfer was something heavily discussed in fandom spaces. To put it simply, Dark Transfer, primarily used by Darkside users, allowed you to resurrect the dead. It's often confused with Transfer Essence, but that was different. That's what Palpatine did in Dark Empire. But let's finish with another one that very few fans talk about. Force Memory Walk. This Force ability allowed you to reach into a target's subconscious and force them to relive their most painful memories over and over again, sometimes in a torturous, consecutive, agonizing manner, and sometimes it caused physical pain. This ability is found in a lesser-known novel, Lando Calrissian and the Flame Wind of Ozian, and it should be noted, it's very different to Jedi Mind Trick. But now, my dear friends, I turn it over to you. What is your favourite obscure Force ability? Share your thoughts in the comments down below. Subscribe for more daily Star Wars content, and I'll see you in the next one. May the Force be with you, always.